Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 28. I found one upright man among 1,000, but not one upright woman among them all. Out of 1,000 people, Solomon found one upright man and zero upright women. What do you think of that ratio? Do you think what he's saying is true? Or was he just kind of pissed that day at maybe one of his wives? So he gets out his pen and he writes, I'm going to get back at women. Out of 1,000 men, yeah, okay, you find one good guy. But out of all of them, you find zero good women. What do you think? What do you believe about that? Is what he's saying true? I mean, the consensus these days among Christians is that, oh, well, you know, there's a lot of good Christian girls out there, but where are the good Christian men? Where are they? You hear missions organizations telling their statistics about the ratio of single women to single men. And it's certainly not looking good. It's stacked in favor of women. So, one organization will say, well, we have 7 women to 1 man. Another organization will say we have 4 to 1. But it's always women in a high ratio compared to men. Right? So people ask the question, well, where are the good Christian men? Where are these single men? Why aren't they joining missions? Why aren't they coming to church? I mean, why do we have so many good Christian women in our youth group? Young women who are just ready for marriage, and there's just no good Christian men out there. That's what people say in Christianity today. But Solomon is saying, wait a minute. Out of 1,000 people, there's one righteous man and 0 women. Well, I happen to agree with Solomon here. We know from the Bible that there really are nobody is righteous. Really when it comes down to really following God the way he deserves. Someone who loves the Lord their God with all their heart, all their mind, all their soul, all their strength. I mean, who can say that? That's what we should all strive for. But man, to be able to do that for your whole life without dropping the ball or without kind of like falling short at times, it's very hard. But God in his grace, he often looks at us and overlooks our sins. He overlooks our shortcomings. If he sees our heart is trying, right? There's a story in the Old Testament where the people's hearts were right. They were trying, and the king, I mean, they didn't do things properly, and the king prays for them. He comes to God, he says, overlook this, O Lord. These people, they're trying. And God did. God overlooked their sins. He overlooked their improper, procedure, basically, of how they were supposed to do things. How they were supposed to worship God. And God often does that. So he looks at people like Job, or Daniel, or, Noah, or these people, and he calls them, good guys, like upright. They walk uprightly, So nobody's, men or women, all have fallen short. But what Solomon seems to be saying is, look, you take a group of 1,000 people, in that group, there's going to be an upright man. Now, I agree with that. If I think about the people I've met in my life, I actually know many good Christian men who try very hard to obey the Bible, and they get most of it. They get the bulk of it right. But I've never met a single woman who really tries to obey the Bible and do it. Like follow what it says. Right? That's why I'm making these videos. And that's why this needs to change in the people of God. This idea that Christian women are basically doing a great job, and it's Christian men who have dropped the ball. Actually, it seems that way because the reverse is true. It's Christian women who have dropped the ball. How many elderly Christian women have you ever met in your life who teach their daughters how to submit to their husbands? 0. I made a video about that a few days ago. It's called what's it called? I think Christian Women Are Useless. Old Christian women are useless. And that's largely true. One of their primary jobs is to train their daughters and to train the younger women in the church how to submit to their husbands. It doesn't happen. A verse like 1 Peter 3:6 has just been completely violated. The church has done violence against that verse. Remember, Peter is saying, look, the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God, the way they used to adorn themselves was by submitting themselves to their own husbands and calling them their Lord, like Sarah called Abraham her Lord. Adorn, that means to make beautiful. They would make themselves beautiful through submission, and that's something that can't fade. That's a beauty that you can keep with you for your entire life. And so women these days try to be beautiful, but they don't know that to be beautiful is to submit to your husband and to call him your Lord. Now, I've never met a Christian woman who's done this. I've never met a Christian woman who's even thought about this or who's ever brought it up. And every time I bring it up, they just hate it. And they get really defensive. They just hate this verse. And they think it must mean something completely other than it means. Well, it means exactly what it says it means. And it must be obeyed. And nobody's obeying it. No Christian woman around is obeying it. So out of 1,000, it's 0. I agree with Solomon's ratio there. Out of 1,000, there will be one good man, a good Christian man who tries to obey the Bible. Out of 1,000 Christian women, there will be 0 who even get anywhere close to being right on what it means to be a good wife. I mean, it's literally like, it's like you get on a plane to Hawaii and you end up in Mozambique. That's how far Christian women are from the target. It's not that they just kind of missed a little bit. It's not like you're flying to, let's say, Maui and you end up in Honolulu. Oh, we got the wrong island. Whatever. We're still in warm, tropical destination. There's a beach and we can kind of just hang out. And no, it's you're literally ending up on the other side of the planet. That's how far Christian women are from getting anything right here. Okay, I'm not saying that as a discouragement. I'm saying that as a real opportunity here. That you can set yourself out from the crowd very easily. If you want to be a good Christian woman, all you have to do is read these verses in the New Testament that apply to you. Read the stories of the great women of the Old Testament. Esther, Abigail. See what they did. See how they talked to their husbands. See what they're physically, like their disposition, their physical position. How did they relate to their husband? just learn from them. God put these stories in there to learn from. The New Testament is written by who? Who wrote the New Testament? Who wrote the whole Bible? It was the Holy Spirit, right? These people who wrote it were carried along by the Holy Spirit, as Peter says. It wasn't themselves who wrote it. I mean, their hand was writing it, but it was like, they were writing stuff they themselves didn't even understand. Imagine being Isaiah writing down the name of King Cyrus hundreds of years before there was a King Cyrus. God is telling you this stuff. Okay, I'm going to call him out by name. He's going to be named Cyrus. Okay, now imagine being Isaiah. You're writing out this name many times. Cyrus. Who is Cyrus? I don't know. It's God who wrote the Bible. Okay, so we don't need to we don't need to overthink passages that are very simple. And 1 Peter 3:6 is an example of a passage that explains itself, right? Peter's not talking about his own culture of his day. He's talking about, he's going back 2,000 years before his time. And he's saying, that's how the holy women of the past used to adorn themselves. He's talking to women of his day. He's saying, look, do this. Right? Peter and Paul both have the same message on this. They're saying, look, don't get beautiful through outward means of whatever you're doing, braiding your hair or jewelry or all this stuff. Seek real beauty and build on that. Real beauty in the eyes of a man and in the eyes of God is a submissive spirit. Now, how many women do you know who have a submissive spirit and are generous with that, are eager to do that, right? They're not submitting grudgingly. They're actually happy about it, and they see the good in that. They understand why this is good. Do you understand why these passages are good? If you don't, you will be in Solomon's statistic. You will be one of the 0 good women out of 1,000. Now, if you obey the Bible, if you really understand it and commit yourself to understanding why it's good, understanding why you must submit yourself to your husband and call him your Lord, if you get this, you will be 1 in a billion. So you still won't be in Solomon's statistic, 1 in 1,000, but you will be one. It's just, it won't be 1 out of 1,000. It'll be 1 out of a billion. And that's why you will be so sought after. You don't understand how rare this is, right? How many Queen Esthers were there? How many people have there been like her throughout history? Very few. Like very, very few. And what happened with her? Well, she saved the entirety of God's people, right? All God's people living throughout the kingdom. And it was a massive, vast kingdom. She saved them. She saved them all. God used one woman who got it right, and God did big things through her life. If a woman were to get this today, God would do just as big things through her life today. Massive things would happen. Huge things. I don't know. Like there might be a few of these women around the world. I haven't met them. It doesn't, just because I haven't met them doesn't mean they don't exist. But when I read Solomon's ratio there, 0 out of 1,000, it's very easy for me to say, yeah, that's right, because there aren't. I mean, you go to a church, let's say, or a missions organization. You'll find really nice Christian women in those places. They're nice. But do they understand the Word of God? Do they understand their role in life? Do they understand that they are supposed to submit themselves to their husband? And that's what he will find beautiful. They don't get it. They don't understand this. And so niceness is nice, but that doesn't mean that someone is competent. Right? Some of the nicest people in the world are completely incompetent. Have you ever noticed that? Some of the most competent people in the world might not come across as the nicest people in the world. But when you've dealt with a whole bunch of niceness, you start to get sick of it and you start to crave competence. In Christianity, one of my big frustrations with Christianity is oftentimes it seems like it's just a big reputation fest. You go to a church and everybody's got this great reputation and everybody is trying to maintain their good reputation. So it's just a big reputation fest and there's really very little competence. So you'll see a missionary go up on stage and give his whole spiel about everything, and people will think, oh wow, he's doing some great work over there in Mozambique. He must be a really great spiritual guy, close to God and everything. You know what nobody does? Nobody asks them, is your family still intact? Go ask a missionary one time. Say, is your family still on talking terms? It's more than likely that he'll reply, actually, we have an estranged daughter that we haven't heard from in 10 years. We haven't spoken to our daughter. One of our other daughters is an atheist now. Our son, he's traveling around Southeast Asia, going to different yoga camps and stuff like that. This is real. Why do I know this? Because I myself am a missionary kid. I know these things that parents don't talk about. If you get a pastor and a missionary together and they go out for, let's say, lunch, or they invite each other to their homes, what are they going to talk about? The ministry. They're going to talk about their families or this and that, but they won't really talk about the pains that their families are going through. They'll kind of just throw it out superficially, like, oh, our son is backpacking Southeast Asia. They won't say he's completely lost. He's just a lost man. He's not a Christian anymore. They won't say that stuff. Look, I've been in these situations my whole life. There's very little honest talk among Christians. Among Christians who want to preserve their reputation. They don't want to do anything they're not supposed to that would harm their reputation. I was actually in a church, I remember, I don't know, probably about 5 years ago, and there was a pastor preaching on Ezekiel chapter 14, I believe. And in that passage, God compares the fake gods, these so-called gods that the people are worshiping, that his people cheated on him with, all the idols of the nations and stuff. He calls them basically poop gods. And so the pastor was preaching on this topic, and he used that term, poop gods. And he said, actually, it would be another 4-letter word, but because there are children in the audience, I can't repeat that word right here. So he just called them poop gods. And I was thinking, no, the reason he didn't say shit gods isn't because of the children. It was because of his Christian reputation. Like, even if there had been 0 children there, like, he would have still used poop gods. So his whole reason for just not wanting to use the word shit is, I mean, he was saying it was because of the kids, but I call bullshit on that. Now, it was a great sermon. I don't mean to, bash him for the sermon. I just, for that reason, for not using the word shit, it was entirely because that's unacceptable in Christian circles from his perspective, and that's just how the culture is, right? And so he wanted to preserve, and maybe it wasn't so much that he was just dead set on preserving his reputation. Maybe it was that he just didn't want to offend people unnecessarily, so he just kind of made up something and then used the word poop gods. But at the end of the day, when something really doesn't matter and Christians all try to like uphold this pious standard that doesn't even exist in the Bible, like uphold this category called swear words that doesn't even exist, when they try to do that and make it such a central aspect of their faith, they end up just producing a reputation fest. It's a whole bunch of people whose lives are very clean. Now, cleanliness is a good thing, but God really doesn't like it when people are cleaner than they need to be. Like when they're clean, their cleanliness is like piety without competence, right? Like niceness, right? Does God value niceness? Sure, but not at the expense of competence, right? Competent people are very valued in the eyes of God. People who really care, let's take Nehemiah, for example, right? Nehemiah could have just lived a normal kind of God-fearing life, prayed for, he just done his nice prayers every day and kind of just tried to serve the king as best as he could, the best of his ability. And, after all, whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might, and whatever pleases the Lord, do everything for the glory of God. So I'm going to try to do my job in giving the king his stuff every day. I'm going to be a good cupbearer to the king, right? And that's going to be my service of God. Was that the kind of guy Nehemiah was? If he was that kind of guy, I guarantee you God would not have used him. The reason God used him to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem was because he wept. This guy cared deeply. I mean, he was grieved. He wasn't positive. He was negative about the destruction. He called it what it was. It was destruction. He didn't try to sugarcoat it. Remember what God says in Isaiah. He says, "Woe to those who call good evil and evil good." Who call like light darkness and darkness light. Who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. God doesn't like that when people do that. Remember what Jesus said. If the light within someone is darkness, how great is that darkness? Like if someone really thinks that darkness is light, those are the darkest people of all. Right? The first step is to be able to identify darkness as darkness and light as light. Sweet as sweet and bitter as bitter. If something is bitter, there's no merit in calling it sweet. Right? If there's a situation that is very painful, there's no reason to sugarcoat it. Right? If, let's say, all these fake gods that the Israelites were whoring themselves with, and God calls them whores. Right? God's not afraid to call his people whores. Just read Ezekiel, you know. He just very, very explicit language in the book of Ezekiel. And Christians are just kind of like, oh, what can we do about that? Let's just kind of like be nice and be happy and try to forget that God is pissed. Like, God was absolutely livid. He says that. I am livid with you. I've had it with you. Here you're going and worshiping all these shit gods. And then you have Christians, well, you know, we don't want to offend anybody, so let's just call them poop gods. And, you know, let's translate these Bible passages kind of with as little, like they use the most vague terms, right? Like in Ezekiel chapter 23, when God is saying that his, you know, people are lusting after foreigners, right? Whose genitals are like the size of donkeys, and whose what word do some of the Bible translators use? Whose issue is the issue of horses? Issue. What is issue? Well, it's pretty clear that it's talking about ejaculation. You know, they could use a word like that, but they use the word issue. You know, Bible translators always want to kind of use the most sterile terminology for this type of stuff. Because, I mean, nobody wants to put bad words in God's mouth, right? But if God himself is putting bad words in his mouth because he's pissed, well, look, let's just call it what it is. If he says a word that is a word that we think would be best translated as shit, let's just put it in there as shit. Right? That's what the pastor said. He said it would be the... Now, he didn't say that the 4-letter word he was thinking of was shit. We don't know. He could have meant like crap, I guess, or dung. But it's very clear from the context that he didn't want to use the word shit. That's the word he was thinking of. Everybody understood that. Everybody in the congregation understood that. So he couldn't say that. But everybody got that meaning. So if everybody is already thinking about that word in their minds, why not just say it? Just say it. Shit. These gods are shit. All your idols are worthless pieces of shit. Right, so Christian circles are largely kind of a big reputation fest. And Christian women have the reputation of being nice. I mean, well, a lot of them, not all of them. Some have the reputation of being a bitch. But a lot of them have, you know, if you go to like Bible college, for example, or you go to some mission field somewhere, and you find single Christian women, or married ones for that matter, they will probably be nice, and they will claim to like the Bible and maybe have also read the Bible. I'm not sure. I can't say I've ever met a Christian woman who's really read the Bible and is willing to talk about it. I haven't come across a woman like that in my life, who's eager to talk about the Bible. I know they exist. Now, what the ratio is, well, again, I agree with Solomon's ratio of 0 out of 1,000. Like, if there is one, it would be maybe 1 out of I don't know, maybe 10 million, 100 million, I'm thinking, something like that. Like, literally, this is how rare it is. So this is a tremendous opportunity for you to set yourself apart from the crowd. Look, you don't just have to be a nice Christian girl. You can be a nice and competent Christian woman. you can really get these things right. You can be beautiful in the eyes of your husband your entire life and not just have him say, oh, my wife is so beautiful. And Christian men, they'll say that. They will say that. Partly because they view they view their wife through eyes of grace. And partly because they have nowhere else to go. Their marriage must work. And so they need to kind of keep their wife happy. And so they'll kind of say these types of things. But really, if you could get inside the mind of a man when he says these things, he doesn't mean it. He's not really, his wife isn't beautiful in his eyes. She has lost her physical beauty, maybe. Let's say if, once she's 50 years old, she's not, then the wrinkles start coming, bodies start to kind of lose their, lose their youthfulness, and the attraction kind of fades. And then what's left? If a wife hasn't really used those years to really hone in this to like usher in this other kind of foundation of beauty, well, she's going to have nothing to stand on, right? Because what happens when you lose your good looks? You've just got nothing if you don't have your character, if you haven't trained yourself in submission. It's not that you need to train yourself in every single area of life. It's that you need to train yourself in this. Right? You don't have to learn a new language. You don't have to learn how to, be a good chef. You don't need to learn how to be, a good, house cleaner. Women always talk about these things. Women kind of have this idea that to be a good wife, they need to take care of the home. That's really not that important. To be a good wife, you have to understand that when you submit to your husband, you submit yourself to your husband. He doesn't ask for it. He doesn't demand it. You are doing it for him. Right? He's not feeling like he's pressuring you to do anything. You're giving it to him as a gift, right? When you do this, you are so beautiful in the eyes of your husband. Like Christian men, biblical men just value this above all. To see a woman trying in this area, like to try in some other areas, it's fine. It can have some benefits. Like what Paul says, look, physical activity, keeping your body in physical shape, it's good. It has some value. But that pales in comparison to spiritual workouts. Being in good shape spiritually, having a good relationship with God. See, it's the same with a wife and her husband. A wife can have she can focus on every possible area, but if she doesn't really have a good relationship with her husband, if she doesn't fulfill her role as a wife, if she doesn't try to understand it, if she doesn't commit herself to learning what this role really involves, then all the other things that she might try, they only have limited value, right? Like I said, you could be the best chef in the world. You can be the best baker and bake the most delicious chocolate chip cookies. You can know how to, make, a lot of the kind of homestead type of skills. Like, let's say you know how to make your own cheese. You know how to do canning and pickling, fermenting. You know how to make sauerkraut. You know how to make sourdough bread. You know how to do all these things. Look, all of that stuff is nice, but it pales in comparison to submitting yourself to your husband. Learn how to do this. It's something that is an active thing. It's not like a mental thing where you think, oh yeah, well I'm submitted to my husband. No, it's what are you doing every day? How are you carrying yourself every day that it shows that you are submitting yourself to your husband? Do you wash his feet? Do you call him your Lord? Do you do anything that makes yourself seem lower compared to him and him higher than you? Because if there's nothing there, then how can you say you're submitted to your husband? It's just something that exists in your mind. It's like if someone in Timbuktu would love you so deeply right now. You know, how do you even know? What difference does it make to you because you don't even know that person exists? Right? Love makes an effort. Love, like God didn't just sit up in heaven and say, "Oh, I love those people so much." Then the people on earth would have been right to just believe that God doesn't love them or he's not going to do anything. Right? God's love became manifest. Right? Love must become a man. Right? The myth. A lot of people think religious is all about kind of a myth. In Christianity, the myth became a man. And in fact, it was the man who preceded the myth. Right? That's what it says in the Gospel of John. It was, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The man existed before the myth. The myth became manifest. It's real. Look, a lot of religions believe a lot of stuff. At the end of the day, what matters is what is real. And God has shown his people, God has shown humanity the best way he's shown humanity. He's gone the ultimate mile to manifest himself here on earth and to go the ultimate mile, to be a servant of all servants, to be the victor of all victors. He's the best of men. He is worthy. He is the worthy one. Right? That's why when we get to the book of Revelation and suddenly we see that there's nobody going to be worthy. And then someone says, the Lion from the tribe of Judah. He's worthy. Jesus is worthy. He's the worthy one. Jesus is just the best. He showed us how to love. He showed us the love of God. He removed the distance. So if you respect your husband in your mind, if you really do, you will remove the distance between your brain and your physical actions, showing that. Like, for example, you will call him your Lord, as it says in 1 Peter. You will wash his feet. You will lower yourself in his presence. You will build him up. You will look for new ways and this will always be on the front of your mind. You'll be thinking, how can I build this man up? He is my Lord. I am submitted to him. How can I prove this to him? How can I show him every single day that I am submitted to him? See, if you were to ask an average Christian woman, would you like a husband who loves you in his mind, or who loves you in a manifestation of his thoughts? Right? No Christian woman would just say, well, I just want a man to just love me in his mind. Women want action. Women want to know, what is he thinking? Right? And it needs to manifest in their words. For example, he needs to say, I love you many times. Throughout the day even. I love you so much. He uses sweet language for her, like maybe stuff like in Song of Solomon, for example. If she's sick, he cooks for her, he takes care of her, gives her a massage, maybe every day. He just gives her a massage. At the end of the day, maybe gives her, cuddles and kisses and, does things, whatever she perceives that manifestation to be. And, these things can probably be discussed in marriage, like the 5 love languages, for example. See, what is it really that would make you feel loved? A wife can ask her husband, what really makes you feel like I am submitted to you actively? What are things every day I can do? And tell me honestly, because I will do anything. There's nothing I won't do to make you my Lord and to make sure you believe 100% that I am submitted to you. I don't want you to be nice with me and just say, oh, well, yeah, I believe that you're a good wife and all that. No, men are way too quick to do that type of stuff. So pin him down, force him. Say, I am willing to do anything and everything to submit myself to you. Please help me in this. Train me. I have never heard that from a woman ever in my life. So remove the distance. Right? Don't respect him in your mind. Just get rid of the word respect. Just throw it right out. I made one of my last podcasts on this, and it was titled, I think, Stop Respecting Your Husband. Respect is a word that is way overused. Everybody needs respect. So stop thinking you're giving your husband some special treatment when you're treating him just as well as you do any stranger you meet. That's not what he needs. He needs your lordship. He needs you to give him your life. Give up your control. Give up your dreams, your desires. Give them to him. You're giving your name to him. So give everything else to him. Give him your strength. Give him your help. Give him your lordship. Give him your submission. Give him your everything. And make sure he knows that. That he possesses every part of you. He possesses your mind, your emotions, your body. Now, Christian women, if they start hearing me talking about this, let's say, well, if that is the case, then what woman in her right mind would get married? And that would be good. If women realize the severity of this, I think many Christian women would decide not to get married. And that would be better. It would be better because it wouldn't result in broken families. There would be no more divorces in the church. Think about this. If people get married and they both really understand their role, there's 0 chance of divorce. It's not that the divorce rate, it's not that there's like some variable in there that maybe they can't see coming and, oh, well, these things happen and, relationships sometimes break apart and all that. No, it doesn't. When both sides uphold the covenant, the relationship never breaks apart. There's no reason for it, right? So wives need to know the severity of their role. This concept of submission is a absolute must. It's not optional. They need to recognize the severity of this. If they give it freely, their marriage will flourish and bear fruit like no other marriage. If they don't do it, and they just kind of want to be a nice Christian girl, maybe the couple will do some nice things in their life. Probably the fruit of their marriage will be niceness. And people will think, oh, wasn't that a nice couple? They served in our church and they did this and that. Weren't they ever nice? Did Jesus have a reputation for being nice? He had a reputation for being competent. He got the job done. And why did he die? He died because he pissed everybody off. People shouting, crucify him, crucify him. What must he have done to piss the people off that badly? Think about that. And you can read what he wrote in the Gospels. Just open up the Gospels and, read through the book of John, for example. There's so many violent exchanges, vicious exchanges between Jesus and the Jews. Jesus wasn't a nice guy. He didn't just walk around being nice to people. He was competent. He got the job done. And he is the coming destroyer who will destroy evil forever. One of my favorite verses is in Revelation chapter 11. It says, "The time has come to destroy the destroyers of the earth." Jesus is the destroyer of the destroyers. He will absolutely decimate all evil on the face of the earth. Do you believe that? Oh, we need to submit to the coming one. We need to submit to the worthy one. We need to submit to the slaughterer, the one who was slaughtered and the one who is coming to slaughter. We need to submit to the Isaiah 53 Jesus and the Isaiah 63 Jesus. In Isaiah 53, he was covered in his own blood. In Isaiah 63, he's covered in the blood of his enemies. Both must be submitted to. Why? Because they're one. This is astonishing. Absolutely. This is the story of all stories. I've talked to some pagans about this, and they just can't grasp it. Their eyes are just closed to this idea that God would suffer, that God would die. It's just the most mind-boggling thing for them. They just can't wrap their mind around it. But that's reality. Covered in his own blood and covered in the blood of his enemies. What a God. This is something a person can meditate on for just years and years and just not even scratch the surface. Like, to meditate on the crucifixion, the death, like what happened on that Passion weekend, on those days, that last week of Jesus's life, what actually happened there. It's so deep and so rich. A person they just have to fall on their knees and say, "Grant me mercy, O God. Grant me your blood and your body given for me, because I need this. I need to be in covenant with the living God. I must be in covenant with the King of Israel, the King of the whole world. If I want to be exalted one day, if I want life, if I don't want to go down to Sheol, down to the depths of the earth, I must be in covenant, bound to the righteous one." Right? Remember in Psalm 2, it says, "Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us." They don't want to be bound to the living God. So their destiny is Sheol. They will go down into the depths of the earth. the righteous, who bind themselves in covenant to the Holy One, they will be exalted and live forever and reign forever with Christ. So what does a Christian need to say? They need to say, the nations are saying, let's cast off their cords. Oh, sovereign Lord, take those cords and cast them onto me. Take those bonds, those cords, and bind me to you. Bind me to you. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Christians should be taking communion, the Lord's Supper, every single day, because this is the covenant. This is the covenant symbol that Jesus gave. He said, "Do this in remembrance of me." This is a new covenant that I'm making with you in my blood. Do this. And so Christians should say, well, I need to do this. I need to bind myself to my master every single day. And they should sing to him every single day. Right? After I take the Lord's Supper, I just take 20, 30 minutes to remember the Lord. I review some Bible passages in my mind, and then I sing. Remember, after they had their Passover meal, they sang a hymn, and then they went out into the darkness. I like to sing a song after I bind myself to God in covenant, in the covenant which he poured out for us. He made available for his people. For all who call on the name of the Lord, it's available. To eat a meal, the body and blood of Christ. Why? It's not just optional. He says, if you don't do it, you have no life in you. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. Do you want to be raised up on the last day? You have to bind yourself in covenant to the living one. If you want to be living, you have to bind yourself to the living one. If you want to be dead, just go down into the dust from where you came. From the dust man was fashioned, and from the dust and to the dust he will return. Unless he binds himself to the living one. And I like to sing a song. It's just a short song. I'll just sing the first few lines of it. It goes like this. Bind us together, Lord, bind us together with cords that cannot be broken. Bind us together, Lord, bind us together. Bind us together in love. We need to bind ourselves to God. The wicked nations say, get these cords off. I don't want anything to do with you, God. I don't want your oppressive rule. Remember what the where is it? I think it's in there's Luke's version, and there's, I think, in Matthew and maybe Mark. I can't remember. The parable of the parable of the three servants who, he gives the minas to, or the bags of gold to. So the master gives three of his servants, basically puts them in charge of his, of his money and stuff like that. And one of the servants at the end, the master comes back and he says, what did you do with the money? And he says, well, look, I just buried it in the ground. Here, take what you have back. It's yours. For I knew you were a hard man. A hard man. Do you think God is a tyrant? Do you think he's a hard man? If you think he's a hard man, then he's a hard man to you. He's done everything to show that he is the lover of you. He loves you so much. And then for you to turn around and to call him like a hard man, you tyrant, what do you want me to be, like a dog to you? And this is why it's so dangerous when women don't give submission freely, and when they make a snippy comment like this, oh, what do you think, I'm a dog? That's the end of the relationship right there. You're literally playing with the fires of hell with a comment like that. Because it's not your husband's idea that you submit to him. It's God's idea. The fact that your husband has to now bring it up is probably it. This is literally this is his last grasp at the relationship. He's endured your bitchy attitude for years, and now he's talking about it very gently. He brings it up, kind of maybe in passing, just to. He just doesn't want to lose you. He wants so badly for you to change your heart. And so if you make a comment like that, oh, what do you think? What do you want me to be, like one of those Arab women? What do you think, I'm a dog that I have to obey you? You're killing something that God made as beautiful. God made marriage. God made a hierarchy. As Christ is the head of your husband, so your husband is your head. Submit to him. Give it willingly. Learn how to do it. Investigate this. Just be honest to God and honest to your husband. Say, I don't know how to do this. Nobody's ever taught me this. But I am reading the Bible, and I see it's important. So please have mercy on me. Have patience with me as I learn. Train me to do this. I'm willing to do it. Get on your knees before your husband and ask forgiveness for all your bitchy attitude, all these years of marriage. Maybe there is still hope. I bet you there's still hope. I bet you there's forgiveness in your husband's heart. But boy, if you don't repent, there is nothing left. Sin destroys, right? The wages of sin is death, and your sin of pride and unsubmissiveness will lead to the death of your marriage. 100% sure. And it'll lead to the death of your family. It'll lead to the death of everything. Sin is a destructive force. It'll eat everything in sight. So repent of your sin and turn to God. God bless you with strength. And I pray that God break your heart. Sovereign Lord, would you raise up a generation of young women who get this, who can be real helps to their husband, who can really submit to him and give him that strength that he needs to be a powerful leader in your church in these end times. Sovereign Lord, forgive us when we fail. Train us. Teach us. Train me, your servant, O Lord. I lift up my hands to your commands which I love, and I meditate on your decrees. I love your commands, O Lord. Give me more. Open my eyes to see more of what you want in your word, and that I can do it willingly. I believe, O Lord. Help me with my unbelief. Have mercy on me and have patience on me as I learn. And I pray for all the women in your church who claim to love you, who claim to view your word as your word. Lord, break their hearts on this. Grant us a humble generation of women. Oh Lord, our Christian men, young Christian men need this so badly. In your mercy, pour out your Holy Spirit into the lives of these Christian women today and raise up a generation of humble Christian women who are eager to submit to their husbands and call their husbands their Lord. I pray this for the glory of the King, in the name of the Holy One of Israel, the Son of David, the Son of Abraham, the Son of the living God. King Jesus. Every knee must bow and every tongue confess that he is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Maranatha.